This is the video I wish I had seen when I was 20 years old. This is how to and not to invest in your 20s. All right, I'm gonna get right to the point. I have had quite the history of investing. I've had ups, I've had downs, I've hit home runs and grand slams, I've lost all my money multiple times, and all I know is I wish somebody would have made a video like this that I could have seen when I was in my early 20s. So to back up a little bit, let me give you an idea. I made about $5,000 when I was in my teens. I put it into the stock market and went on an LDS mission for 2 years. And by the time I came back, my $5,000 had turned into like $1,900. That was when the dot-com boom happened, or the bust happened, and 2000, 2001, 2002, that was those years. And so I literally went to Mexico for 2 years. And when I came back, I had like 40% of my money left. I thought from what my stock advisor had told me, I was gonna have all this money. Well, long story short, I decided I'm gonna sell the rest of the stock. I'd actually pay this guy like a couple $100 to sell the remainder of what he hadn't lost of my stock. And I just remember thinking that day, I'm done with the stock market. And so what I did is I started trying to understand investing. And I read a couple books, and I didn't really pay attention to what I was reading. If I had, I would have been much more successful, much quicker. But I want to give you a little bit of a background of kind of the ups and downs of investing that I've had along the way. And then I'm going to go back and tell you what I learned. So again, when I was, after that experience, I decided I'm going to invest in real estate. So I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I read a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. If you've never read that book, it's a heck of a read. What it basically talks about is invest in things that you know. If you don't know anything, then don't invest yet. The biggest mistake that a lot of people make, and I'm good friends with a guy by the name of Greg Warnock. He's a huge venture capitalist here in the state of Utah. This guy runs a firm called Mercado Partners, hugely successful. They've over 100 employees now. They're just a very good investing. And I had him on my podcast, and he gave some of the best advice I've ever heard. He said, the problem that most people get, Jimmy, the reason why most people lose their money in investing is because they only get the opportunity in their lifetime to invest in probably 15 different companies. And he said, the problem is you simply have not had enough data. You haven't been able to research enough companies to actually pick a winner. Because the thing about investing is you can do well, the company can do well that you invest in, you still might not ever make a dollar. There's gotta be an exit, there's gotta be some kind of plan there. And so what he said is, he said the normal person is going to look at 15 companies that they invest in, a couple, 4 or 5, and that's why they lose all their money. He said, our firm will look at over 300 companies for every one that we invest in. And he said, if you kind of look at the math of that, that means the average person would take 20 people to find somebody that invested the normal way to actually get an investment that works. And so what he said is, he said, there's a couple things that you can do. He said, number one is the principle from The Richest Man in Babylon, which is invest in things that you know. So especially when you're in your 20s, like, a lot of people, it's very sexy. You only hear the success stories. It's like gamblers that go to Vegas. You only hear when they win, right? So you don't hear a lot of the stories that go wrong when people are investing in these private companies. And so I know when I was younger, I started making a lot of money at a young age. At age 24, I was the #2 agent in the state of Utah. I was one of the 2 top agents in the entire Salt Lake Valley. And so a lot of people came to me for money, and I didn't really know. I didn't know what I was doing. And I wanted to be wealthy. I wanted to invest the right way. And so I started putting money into these different investments. And to give you an idea, when I was 24, 25 years old, I just assumed the world was good. Everybody was a good person. So I remember one time this guy came to me. I met him through a church connection, and he wanted me to invest $50,000 in this fund that he had. And the fund would pay you 4% monthly of your return. So if you put $50,000 in, basically over the course of a year, you'd get $20,000 back. So it's like, I don't know, like $1,600 a month. So I thought this sounded like a great idea. This guy was literally somebody from my church group. Met him through my brother as well, and seemed safe enough. Well, it was a Ponzi scheme. And I ended up losing $38,000. That paid out for about 12 grand in money before I lost all my money. And I was naive. I didn't realize that that was a real thing. Well, then at that same time, I invested in a dental clinic in Arizona. It was a man that I'd sold a house to, very well known in the community, very well put together guy, 55-year-old man. And long story short, he ended up taking that money, and they never even opened this dental clinic. I lost all of my money. They had all these projections. I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know what I was reading. Lost all my money again. And then I invested in a couple other things. One after another, I was just losing my money. I just kept losing all my money. And so I'd made all this money and I'd kind of given it all away. So finally, I started reading. I started studying successful investors, successful people, Warren Buffett. And I started to read again, the Richest Man in Babylon. I started to read again, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Some of these principles. And I realized again, for me, I knew real estate. At that time, I'd sold 600 or 700 houses. So I said, I'm going to focus on what I know, real estate. So in 2011, dead broke, lost all this money, basically invested it all, lost it all, everything else. I started just buying real estate. And that was the thing that I knew. Well, what happened is I started getting a lot of equity in homes. I ended up getting very quickly 8 or 9 houses, and I was buying them from the bank, so I was getting equity up front. Then they were appreciating quickly. Well, and then 5 years ago, an opportunity came to me. I had a friend of mine, a guy by the name of Trevor Milton, and he had just sold 2 previous companies. And one of the pieces of advice I'd read in these books that I'd studied from these geniuses was invest in people that have already had success. And this is the number one principle I want you to learn from this video is when you're investing in a company, you are investing in the jockey, not the horse. You're investing in the person behind the idea. It could be the best idea in the world and it does not matter. If that person does not have a track record, if they haven't already successfully sold a few companies, if you're young, you don't have enough money to buy into these people. You do not have enough money to invest in their companies. Do not do it. Do not invest in somebody that has not already bought and sold multiple companies because that's how you know they know what they're doing. All your friends are going to come to you. They're going to tell you about this idea. It's going to sound sexy. Trust me, they're the best sales guys are the ones that do this. So a lot of times they sell you on their idea. And just make it a solid rule no matter what. If they haven't had 2 successful exits that they can prove and show you the money, do not invest in their company. Anyway, so my friend sold his company. I think a second company sold for like $55 million. And he was telling me about this new idea that he had, this company. Then and I had read about geniuses. I'd read about Elon Musk and Jobs and all these different people that have changed the world. And Trevor was very similar to them in so many ways. And so I kind of had this idea. I was like, man, whatever he does next, I want to invest in. And then he told me about his next idea. It was about a hydrogen-based diesel trucks. And he showed me a rendering of them. And at the time, it was just an idea in his head, but I begged him to be a part of it. He didn't come to me because he didn't need my money. By the way, if somebody's coming, this is another principle you need to learn from this. If somebody's coming to you, why would they come to you, person that's barely making any money or just started making money or is very inexperienced? It's because nobody that actually has money wants to invest with them, just so you know. So do not be the person that, if they come to you and you don't have like millions and millions of dollars, just know that they're going for the easiest money they can possibly get, because anybody that has money has already turned them down, including banks and venture capitalists and everybody else, because they know they're not going to be successful. So that's rule number 2. If they're coming to you for money, why do they need your money? If it's that good of an idea, if they're that good of a business person, they'll already have investors. They'll already have people lined up to give them money, because the money is the easiest part to get. So just so you know, principle number 2. So anyway, I said to Trevor, I said, dude, I want to invest in your company. Please let me invest in your company. I'm begging him. And he said, it's not even worth it unless you have $500,000 to invest. Well, remember the real estate houses I'd bought. I said, look, if you'll give me 3 months, I can sell some houses I bought. I have $500,000. I just need to sell these houses. And he was like, all right, let's do it. So because I invested in what I knew starting in 2011, from 2002 to 2011, I lost every dollar I had. Literally, it was my education to learn how to save money and invest was over $1 million, just so you know. It's a very expensive college tuition, okay? But in 2011, again, I started buying these houses. And so when this opportunity came up in 2014, 2015, I was able to give Trevor $500,000 and invest in his company. And long story short, he did exactly what I thought he was going to do. He ended up, this is currently a $3.2 billion company. You can go Google it. He's in Forbes about a month ago as the newest billionaire. And my $500,000, I've already got back that plus a big return. And on top of that, almost all of my stock is still in the company. It'll be my wealth that I have for the rest of my life. So my point of that is I would have never been able to do that if I hadn't studied, if I hadn't spent the time, if I hadn't learned what genius looks like, if I hadn't invested and I had to go to the opportunity. I didn't let somebody come to me. So all those people that came to me for money, every single one of them, I lost my money every time. It was over probably a dozen times, maybe even 15 times I gave people money and lost it. Good ideas, good people, but just they didn't know what they were doing yet. It's so hard to find a winner. So that being said, I'm going to talk to you real quick about what you need to do in your 20s in order to get wealthy in your 30s, 40s for the rest of your life. And by the way, if you squander your 20s partying and hanging out and not learning and growing all these things, that's fine, but you will be playing catch up for the rest of your life. Your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you'll never be ahead. But if you spend your entire 20s grinding, figuring this out, studying, investing, doing these things that you need to do, you will be ahead for the rest of your life. It creates a beautiful, beautiful life. So you get to decide now how you want to live the rest of your life is going to be depending upon what you do now in your 20s. So rule number one, again, is only invest in things you know. Rule number two is if somebody's coming to you for money, why do they need your money? It's because everyone else passed on them. You do not go give your money to anybody that comes to you. Number three, this is the most important principle of all, is you've got to be patient. This stuff takes time. Even a very successful fund or a very successful company is going to take 7 to 8 years to pay you out on average. So you got to understand that get rich quick is not the way to do anything. If anything sounds too good to be true, if there's ever a time frame or a time limit on the investment, just bail on it. What they want to do is they want to give you this urgency, this sense of you need it now, and that's how they get you to buy into it. Like any great investment, they would give you time to do your research to make sure you want to do it. So anything that has a time frame or time limit on it, just make it a hard pass no matter what. And that's how you basically survive your 20s, save up your money. You're better off not buying anything than investing in something you don't know about. So I would get very crystal clear on one or two things that you can study and become an expert in. If you're an expert in Bitcoin, you know how to do it, awesome. If you're an expert in digital media and how to sell online, awesome, invest there. If you're an expert in real estate, invest there. If you're an expert in the stock market, invest there. Otherwise, here's my recommendation again to you. And this is, I had lunch about a month and a half ago with a young kid. He heard me speak. He sells door to door. Dude does very well, makes a couple $100,000 a summer. And he said, hey man, I loved what you had to say when you came and spoke to us. Will you please sit down and do a lunch with me? I said, sure. He said, I've got about 120 grand. I want to invest and I'm not sure where I should place it. So this is a real life example of what to do with your money in your 20s. This kid, I think is 25 or 26. He told me his whole situation. He runs a sales team. And I said, look, dude, if you only have 120 grand, the number one return you're going to get on your money is in yourself. I'd spend half of it investing 60 grand in yourself, education, training, coaching, seminars, whatever that looks like. Invest 60 grand into yourself and then invest the other 60 grand back into your team. Your team's what makes you all this money. You can turn that 120 into 400 grand if your team doubles their output next year. So I said, spoil the shit out of them. Put together a bunch of trainings, a bunch of coaching, a bunch of things that you can do to help them all elevate their own lives. And if you can help them, A, they'll be loyal to you forever, and B, it'll help you over here create a lot more income. So I go through this entire thing. I show him all these ways he can invest in himself and invest in his team. And he's like, well, I still want to do real estate. I said, well, look, then put 45 into yourself, 45 in your team, and put 30,000 down on investment property, buy your first home. You can live in it, whatever. And I showed him another way to do it, another good plan. We get done with the lunch. I just spent 45 minutes with this kid. As we're walking out the door, he says, hey, I do want to tell you about one other idea. What do you think? He says, a buddy of mine he's coming out with a Topgolf in our community, and I think I want to invest the money with him. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I mean, he literally didn't listen to a word I just talked about for the entire lunch. I said, who's the founder? That I told him about investing in the jockey, not in the horse. I said, what do you know about the guy that's doing it? He's like, I don't really know him. I don't really know what he's all about. I know he did summer sales like I did. I actually happen to know the guy really well. He's a good friend of mine, but he's never done anything like this before. I love the guy, but it's very risky because he's never done it before. Then I said to him, well, what do you know about that industry? He's like, well, nothing. And I was like, well, let me tell you a couple things. They're going to do it here in Utah County, which is the soberest city in America, soberest county in America. And by the way, do you know how much of Topgolf makes their money off of alcohol sales? Do you know how many people will go up to Salt Lake to have a beer as opposed to doing it in Utah County where everyone at church is going to see them? I said, there's all these things, and I go through a couple of things like that. And then I said, you don't even know the numbers? Do you know what kind of return they'd have to get for you to actually make any money? Do you know how many years it would take before they're paying off everybody else that would need to be paid off so you could actually make any money? He's like, well, no, I don't know any of that. And by the time I was done, he goes, but it just is such a fun thing. And I said, dude, I don't think I can even help you. I just literally went through exactly what to do, and you didn't listen to a word I said. I'm like, good luck, do the Topgolf thing. I hope it works for him. But and again, I'm the biggest fan. I'm going to be there all the time because I love to go to Topgolf. But it's just, the bottom line is there's principles to investing. If you want to keep your money, if you want to invest the right way, if you want to retire young or do all these things, You have to invest the right way. And I just wish somebody had made a video like this. Hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. Honestly, put your comments below. I'd love to answer anything. I'm currently an investor in 12 different companies, 10 of which I could have an exit anytime I want. I've already made money in. All these companies have been since 2013. I own 13 real estate properties, and you know, I've learned how not to do it. That's why I think I have validity to tell you how to do it. It wasn't until I lost that I was able to recognize why I kept losing my money. And I've probably had about 40 different opportunities come to me in the last couple of years that I've passed on. And the cool part is I think every single one of those that I passed on ended up being kind of a bad idea. And it's because I learned to recognize what to look for. I learned to recognize how I needed to get paid, how I needed to get money in order for this to work. So hopefully this has been helpful. Comment below, let me know what you're doing. If you have an investment idea, you want to get more details, drop it below. I'd love to help you guys. I love to help people. I wish somebody would help me, but you know what? The School of Life taught me everything I needed to know. Happy for it. Take care, you guys.